Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, so what I'm about to do right now in this video will show you how to deal with broken equipment. Okay, just because you might work for a company or whatever the case doesn't mean your stuff won't get broken or it won't wear and tear or whatever the case. So how do you handle that when you're limited? You might work for a company that might not have, it could be many different genuine difficulties, and you still have to go to work and learn how to still properly get your job done, with broken equipment. So, for example, let's go into it. All right, so we're back again at the XM meter. All right, so what I'm about to do is show you, I can't show you properly the Ingress or whatever the case because I didn't do an Ingress scan in any of my previous videos. Don't mind the dust, I just did that. I had to drill a hole. All right, so what you'll see when you log it on and it's not connected is the power, the Wi-Fi, and the downstream is blinking, meaning that it's not connecting anything. So that's what you want to do an Ingress scan for a line to check if there's a fluctuation in the line. If there's noise, there's a puncture, anything that will cause a fluctuation in the line, okay? Or Ingress, which is the same thing pretty much. All right. So if you can't get properly an Ingress scan, then you can do it like this, like meaning if it's broken. Now I'm gonna show you what I mean by broken. All right, so again, normally you go in. All right, so that's showing the scans I did with the previous job. All right, so we're at this job, 841. All right, so we'll go in and the Wi-Fi has to be connected. Join. Normally it goes by itself. Oop. All right. So it's connected. It's going to say XM1, whatever number this meter is. XM1. All right. So, when you do click on the job, you got to make sure you're actually at the address that you're supposed to be at. And if y'all can see that, that's 841. I didn't knock on the door yet. We're going to show you this real quick because I got a write-up or whatever the case, and they want to take my money for saying I'm not doing my job properly. But with them not understanding is that my stuff is broken. And so that's not fair. And so normally when you do a scan and it's hooked up, you'll see the doxes. All right. So the dox is not showing up, right? Because it's not hooked up. So that's what you want to do an Ingress scan. Now, when you do an Ingress scan, this is the Ingress right here. All right. There's nothing that shows up. So normally you're supposed to look at the reading of the scan to know if it's failing or not. All right. So both ways, you can't tell if it's the line or if it's the connectors on your meter. So you have to, go above and beyond to check everything, every little detail of every piece of equipment that you have. So if your stuff is failing, it might be difficult for you to tell, if it's a barrel, if it's the meter, if it's the connector. So you have to check the meter first. So what I do, since I can't, my meter is broken and I don't get a scan, at the bottom here, as you see, is scanning, but there's no wave here. It's supposed to show a wave, and the numbers on the side here is supposed to let me know how high that wave is going. Above -40 to 0, -20, in that range of -40, -20. It helps me understand, and then -20, it helped me understand what I should do, should not do. If it's I should tighten a connector or something like that. It helps me understand how much noise is creeping in. It helps me understand. But if it's not showing, how can I tell if the Ingress is failing or not failing? So it's a broken meter. So how do you get around that? So when you hook it, not really get around it, but I'm just saying, how do you capitalize on that? Now, the Ingress and the fluctuation go hand in hand. If the fluctuation is failing, 100% of the time there's an Ingress in the line, 100% of the time. Or you need to check a connector or something like that. Don't mind that. All right, so it's not showing because with the fluctuation, you have to be connected to the signal. And when you connect to the signal, it reads and then you get a status. As you see, the status pops in, and then it'll show you the signal coming through the line of the drop that you're trying to check. So I check the fluctuation, and then sometimes it might say not bonding or not bonded, and then if it shows green, I can tell also by the wave of the fluctuation, even if it's green or not, how bad it is, if there's a noise filter on it, or what's really going on, or whatever the case, And so I go by the fluctuation as well as the ingress. But since my ingress is broken, I can't go by both the fluctuation and the ingress. So it forces me to try to make it look like I'm finessing. So it forces me to go into that. So what I do is when I'm not, if it says that the ingress scan is failing, what I'll do is check my connectors. So I did have to change my connector. So you want to check your connector, make sure it's not loose. So it's not wiggly here. It's tight here. You want to check for bends here. Check for any bends. There's not no bends here. You want to also check the line for bends and tight bends and punctures. You also check the connector here. Make sure it's not wiggly in the connector. Make sure it's tight. Make sure you crimped it. It'll be squeezed tight when you crimped it. Make sure it's crimped and everything. And also the burl. So you want to make sure this burl is tight on here. So you check that, you unscrew it, screw it back, and you check the ingress again. If it's still failing, on the meter itself, then you can replace this burl with another one. You want one that does with Comcast, the one with the blue in the inside, preferably, but you can do one that's clear, but yeah. So you would change the burl if it's still doing that, and once you change the burl, if it's still showing an ingress, then you got to change this line out or something like that and put a whole new line. Now, if it's passing after you do all of that, change burls, blah, 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 and the ingress is passing on the meter itself, now you know that it was the meter and you fix the meter. Now, what you do after you do that, you hook it up to the line. For example, this would be a line, right? This would not pass ingress. You just know that by looking at it. But if it was a line or whatever the case, you would hook it into the empty line and you would hook it to here. Hook it in, and then you would do an ingress scan, and it would show you here, the wave would show up to let you know if it's failing or not, to know if you need to change that line or not. But if you're in the actual house and you do the ingress scan, you might, if you check the drop, you might not know if it's the drop itself, which is the aerial that's coming to the house, or if it's the tap itself. So what you want to do is actually have to not be lazy, and you have to get up there on the pole, and you have to check the ingress scan, or actually not check the ingress scan, you check the fluctuation and the tap itself. So you can't check an ingress when there's a signal, So what you do is you check the fluctuation and the tap itself, because like I said, the fluctuation and the ingress go hand in hand. So to be sure, you want to check for a fluctuation in the tap. So you hook it to the tap, and if it's a flux in that, you go to another port. And then if it's a flux in that, you try one more port. If there's 3 or more ports messed up and you have other people hooked to it, then more than likely everybody's having a fluctuation in the tap, and it's not, the ingress, is to say the line is bad or whatever the case. A lot of times you can tell when a line is bad or old, corroded, or need to be changed. You can tell. So it's all about working smarter, not finessing or getting around. It's about really working smarter, getting your job properly done, and not doing vain work of doing things that should not be done. Like you just changed the drop and it could be still saying crazy stuff. You just need to know how to do your job versus just doing anything or whatever the case and letting people bully you around or push you around. So like I said, that flux and the ingress go hand in hand. But because my meter is broken, it doesn't show a fluctuation. So I can't tell if it's passing or not until, I don't know if it's passing or not until, excuse me, sorry about disrespect. I can't pass it or not. I don't know if it's passing or not until I go to the job, the actual job, and try to close it out. So when you try to close the actual job out, for this one, for example, I'm going to show you. For this job, what do you notice? 1 green check and 1 red. So off top, a technician that knows what he's doing, know that it's not the drop. Why do you know it's not the drop? Because you have a green check on one of the boxes at least. So you know it's not the signal from the pole to the house, from the house to inside of the house. It's just this specific box right here. So it could be the line to this box. So you're focusing mainly on just this line itself, And so what seems to be the issue when you click on it, it shows no flux. So it shows no fluctuation. The upstream is good, but the downstream is not good. So what could be an issue? A connector issue. It could be a connector issue, a wall plate issue. You would never know, or the layout, or know what the issue really could be until you go in and see what it looked like. You can see all kinds of mess, but you never really know. So you don't want to paint in your head until you see, and then you paint. So with this situation, you know, you still want to check, but you just know that everything is good. So like I said, if there's an ingress in the line, there would never be a pass. You can never pass a job, pure pass, or have a green check if there's an ingress in the line from the pole to the house. Okay, so if you ever see that when you go to the ground block or whatever the case, and you check for fluctuations, you know, and it's a flux, you go to the pole and you do an ingress scan, you know, or you can do it backwards, however which way, you know. Check for the tap first to see if there's a flux in the tap. So you just want to do it however, especially when you got a broken meter. So you want to do it that way. All right, 1 second. All right, so bringing it back here. Don't want to leave my meter on too long. I don't got that much charge. So take a minute. But yeah, so that's what you want to do when you take that Ingress scan. Have it hooked to nothing. Check your stuff. Make sure your line is good, you know, and there's no tight bends. Make sure your connectors not loose up here and stuff like that. You check the meter first. But my meter is getting old. The XM1 meter is getting old, and my meter is getting old. So it's kind of burning out or whatever. So it's not working like it should work. It don't come on properly all the time. So you just never know. You know, you still got to make do with the work or whatever the case. Yeah. So you still got to make do with the work. And that Ingress scan, like I said, it never shows the wave. Okay. So you got to figure out how to still know the readings, even if you're not seeing and your stuff is not working properly. All right. So with that said, it's not about a matter of finessing with everybody. It's a matter of, you know, things properly working and not properly working, and knowing how to basically still get your job done as best as you possibly can. So keep the balance with it. And, you know, everybody needs to stop trying to assume and then, you know, trying to take money out my pocket because my stuff is broken. Don't try to take money out my pocket because your stuff is broken, you know, and you're feeling some kind of way and you're trying to set things up and set a stage because, you know, I keep pure passing type stuff. Stop doing that. You know, if it's working properly and I know what I'm doing, why do you care if I know what I'm doing and it's getting done right? All right. I'm not lazy. I get the job done. I know I do what needs to be done so that everybody can be taken care of as quickly as possible. I'm not a lazy tech. I actually take my time on each job so that people can be taken care of and really don't have nobody to come back to them again or repeat trouble call. I really take my time out. You know, a lot of other people, they just get the job done quick, and that's what you expect from contractors. They just throw it out, throw things to the side and just run to the next thing, and then you don't have to pay them because you don't properly do things. Understandable, Comcast, you want to get around on some technicians because you don't want to pay them, especially the $200 per diem. So you threw it out about the Ingress. But fix the meter first. This is your stuff. Fix the meter first before you try to come at me about a Ingress scan. Fix that. So it's on you, not me. But the problem that's not the problem, that might be a problem for you, is that I keep passing, you know? And if there's a fail, I know how to identify why it's failing. So if that's an issue with y'all or some kind of way, you're feeling some kind of way, don't be mad, you know? It could just be a personal thing, because it couldn't be a business thing, because if I'm doing good, you're doing good. So now you understand why the Ingress could be failing, or why I might have failed my Ingress and didn't know to change that before I try to do a thing. It's because again, got to keep doing that to you. It's not showing. Okay, give me an XM2. I'm supposed to have an XM2. You gave me an XM1. You know, give us the proper equipment that we need to get the job done, and maybe it can get done right. You know, I can put more focus on knowing, you know, what's going on. You know, and it's not looking like I don't know what I'm doing. All right, so as you see, this video is going to go up on my YouTube, my Xfinity YouTube, teaching technician. So this is stuff that you can expect, but you don't want it to be a problem. So just kind of teach you how to read around it. That flux and ingress go hand in hand. All right, you must see a wave down here, but there's no wave, no green wave. All right, so with that, still take the scan. You would still upload the scan, and if it fails, then you just have to figure out why it's failing, you know, the hard way, like I have to. And basically it was that. Change out my connectors, change out my stuff. If it passes on the meter itself, then I can hook it up and see if it passes that way, you know. And if that's the case, it's still going to show, as the fluctuation would show, that it's passing. So the fluctuation and the ingress would line up with each other, you know. All right, so with that said, all right, y'all. All right, a couple other things I wanted to say. Now that I'm off work, I can have time to think. from the scans that I showed earlier, or what the demonstration that I was showing with the XM1 meter for the Ingress scan, there are a lot of other reasons why you need to see that wave. A lot of people love to run to somebody's trying to fake something or finesse something. You can try to throw people under the bus with that, but if the meter is broken and you can't see that wave of the scan, no matter what kind of technician you have on your hand, a good technician that's trained, or a technician that's not trained, or a bad technician, lazy technician, whatever the type of technician you have, we can all fall under any of those brackets of a technician, depending on the day, the weather, the events that's happening in your life. You could fall under any of those brackets. Majority of the times, technicians don't fall under the trained bracket if they are not trained by somebody that was in-house, as they call it, in-house. Someone that worked directly for Comcast, and they have to go through apprenticeship programs and schooling or whatever the case through Comcast, and they get certifications after completing that training. So those people are properly trained fully to be the level technician that they're trying to be. And then you go to more training to be a higher level, et cetera, et cetera. Now, those who are contractors, it's almost like forbidden for us to learn how to do the work. And it's disrespectful that that's the energy. It's disrespectful, because all in all, you want the company to do well. Even though everybody's getting a piece of the pie and piggybacking and pinching off Comcast, the bottom line is that you want successful, you want a successful outcome of your business, which is cable. That's your business. Radio frequency, so the business of Comcast started off with that, and you want to continue to run a successful business. So you want all of your technicians to be properly trained, whether they are in-house or just contractors. And so what happens is you have people that are not trained, or people that have prejudice issues, or it's just a mess. The trauma that technicians go through fighting to learn and fighting to keep their jobs through trial and error and not being taught, it's just so disrespectful how hard it has been for a lot of technicians that haven't been trained and still are able to survive and still maintain their jobs or whatever the case, learning as they go. And then new technicians come in, they're not trained either, and it can be a little bit misleading if someone expects to be trained properly or trained to do the job fully. You go into it believing that you will be fully trained to do the job, and so you can continue. Even if you're a type of person that could be capable to be book smart as well as trial and error, you go into it in the eyes of people that are experienced or seasoned up. You go into it and they look at you like a little boy. They don't look at you like a man, as in generally you are a man. So any given moment, you're the type of person that could be a leader or a supervisor or someone that is a very strong. You're not going to give up. You're not going to cower. So there's some things that some technicians or that have been in it for a long time, some things that they do to kind of like ease their trauma, to kind of identify if they have a man on their hands or have a boy on their hands, which is the main thing you want to notice when you are hiring someone. Do you have a boy on your hands or do you have a man on your hands? And the first thing is climbing that ladder on the pole, getting on that strand, getting right up there on that one little strand, because from down the bottom, it looked like the flimsiest thing ever. And you have somebody new coming in, you want to know if you have a boy or a man on your hands, so you'll have a man on your hands or a soldier on your hands or a husband on your hands. You'll know what type of person. So if somebody can do it and you know more about them, like, yeah, I have a family, my wife, and you know that they are a husband, they are a family man, they have children to feed, a wife to take care of. Somebody else could be like, yeah, oh, they just a soldier. They tough like that. They're a leader. So and then somebody else that can't get up there could be like a man, but a boy. You're a boy. You're too afraid. There's nothing in you that's making you feel like it's worth getting up there. So that's believe it or not, that's kind of like a boy mentality. Um, it's like having nothing to live for, nothing to die for, nothing to stand for, type of thing. You are quick to like cower down. So you could believe it or not, some people are not ready for that type of work. Also, if you have a boy in your hands, he could be not ready for that type of work. So you got to kind of look out for him, depending on just depending on so many different factors or whatever. So some technicians do that, and they can tell. So sorry about all of this back road and to get to the point of the ingress. you know, uh, the ingress is pretty much how you can tell if the line that you're trying to, it could be an underground line, it can be an overhead line, which is an aerial, and mainly they hop on checking the line that is coming from the pole to the house, whether it's underground or overhead. But that's not the end fact of everything, because if you do check the ingress, which you should, you check the ingress every time, of that, it will check the flux every time, both really. And if you find that there's nothing wrong with the line or whatever the case, or the signal isn't in and out, what I do is I go to the tap directly. If I find that there's a issue with the line, I'll go to the tap directly and get right up there and just basically take a signal reading of the tap itself, so that I can know that if it's the line or the tap or not. So I do that myself or whatever the case. And you can also kind of tell, you got to use your experience, because the one thing about cable is that you don't want to disrespect someone else's work, because we take a lot of pride in the work that we do. So when you take someone's line that they took time to run up there and put their life on the line and run up there, you don't want to cut that and take it down willy-nilly and be like, F your line, and then run your own line. Like, it's like saying it's like, come on, people look at it like, oh, you're being lazy. Some people, technicians, look at it like you're being lazy, but really it's like, when you seasoned up, you look at it like, that's disrespectful. Especially if you see what they call a service loop in it. If you see a service loop in it, but there's no, it can be disrespectful. We took a lot of pride in the service loop back in the day, and then new things have come, like, you just, don't be disrespectful. If you have a line that's really a good rant line and nothing wrong with it, you don't want to do that, man, because people will tell you to do something like, change it, but at the same time, it could be a test. It's just all kind of things you got to look out for. But I don't want to get too deep into all of this stuff that I'm getting into, so probably just end up cutting this video a little bit. But you want to look for the amperage. So if you have a line that's connected at the house that you're trying to check, and it could not be an installation, it could be just a trouble caller, so you have to fix whatever issue that you're coming across. Everything else could be okay, but it's just one line that's not okay. So what you want to do is check for an ingress. So that ingress scan help you understand when you can see that wave in it that I was showing y'all wasn't showing. It was no wave there. That wave is key to help you understand if there's an amp on it, which is voltage. Also to let you know if there's radio frequency on it. And why would you try to check for radio frequency? Because believe it or not, some customers, they choose to keep Dish, or they choose to keep their DirecTV. So if they choose to keep DirecTV, but they want Comcast for internet or whatever, but they want that TV through DirecTV, you have to check for radio frequency also to make sure none of those lines are tapping into DirecTV or Dish or whatever the case. So you're checking for radio frequency as well. Also, Dish and DirecTV, I believe it's DirecTV, they use power packs. So some of their boxes are connected to power packs, and they use two lines. One line coming to the power pack, and then that other line is going into the box. And so you have to disconnect that power pack, or else it will show voltage. So you have to be careful with that ingress, and you can end up overthinking, but you see all kinds of crazy things that you can end up overthinking if your stuff don't work properly. So you need your stuff to work properly, because then your job can be a threat, and they also threaten to take money from technicians. Like, we're going to take your $200 promise per diem to come out here and do work. They're giving threats now, and then it can make technicians still do a bad job or want to leave or whatever the case. It could be all kinds of things, but also not knowing the type of technician you got on your hands, things could be misunderstood and misinterpreted, because like I said, how people go about new technicians and stuff like that. Instead of train them, they trial and error them, you know. So it can be an imbalance with some technicians, like overly trial and error versus books, no book smarts, or no type of book training. It could be an imbalance, and so it can be a bad look on Comcast altogether, because new technicians coming out of high school, or just new technicians that never thought about doing cable ever before, could be grown men, 30 years old, in their mid-30s, deciding to want to do cable. And when they come in, they could be looked at like, you should know this already, but you're just a grown man, but you never took this route. Or like me, I don't know anything about cars. You expected me, because I'm 37 years old, to know all the stuff that you know about cars, or basic things about cars that I've been given no clue about, So you just can't do that with everybody. When somebody said, I've never done a thing before, you have to look at them like a child, like you're teaching a child. That's another way you can tell. I don't want to get into that part, but I'm giving y'all a big old speech about this. Sorry, but I have to, because new technicians might get into this and not know what to expect, or you might not have somebody as pure-hearted as me to really like lay it down for you, to let you know without any type of intent or any type of ill will or disgust at you, like, oh, you're gonna take my money, or you're gonna be the new guy coming, I'm gonna teach you all that I know, and then you gonna try, shine on me. I'm not that guy, because my intent is always pure. So I'm not looking at it like you're gonna try to shine on me, because if my intent is pure towards you, you're gonna be like, man, so different, man. You're gonna have a pure intent towards me. Like I said, so you take new technicians, even though they could have been a gritty guy on the street, when they come into something new, trying to change their life, they're like babies, and you must train them like a father. You must help them. You must guide them like a father. And so in that sense, they will take it that way, even though it's just about a trade, and not life in general. But it will take it like that, and they will toward you, or react towards you, like a father figure, or a figure of authority, a leader, or whatever the case. So when it comes to work, they'll look at you like, yeah, so something. They'll upbraid you. But if it was on the street or something like that, yeah, on the streets is different. But at work, yeah, man, you everything type. It could be that type of conversation, But it's just something that you need to take notice. People, when they trying to learn new things with a pure intent, are like babies, man, and you must carry it like that. When you don't, you miscarry it, and you can misunderstand, man. So all of that to say all of the same stuff I'm trying to say is, I'm trying to handle the situation, the actual training part, but at the same time, it's just like, there's a lot that come with that, and it's just hard to kind of like not talk about it. Sorry, y'all, backroading y'all to death. Yeah, man, that ingress is always to check for any type of noise coming through that line. So that radio frequency is a frequency. It's a noise that's coming through that line. So that ingress will beam up. It'll beam up and wave up real high and show like, oh no, it's a lot of noise. It'll mistake it for a bad line. So whereas it just radio frequency coming through the line like it's supposed to be disconnected, so that you can check and see if there are any punctures in it, and there's outside noise coming into the line, like air and wind and things like that, coming into the line. So it's supposed to be like a secure jacket, like, headphones, and it's down low, but only you can hear it, good enough, and nobody else outside can hear it. But if there's ever a point where your headphones are starting to scratch a little bit, it shows that there's an ingress, or whatever the case. All right. And you want to be careful with that. So you got to check for it. But if your waves aren't showing, you can't check for it. So you're checking for radio frequency, amperage, and voltage, amperage, same difference. Amperage and voltage is actually two different things, but still it can be interpreted for cable. For cable's sake, it can be interpreted as the same thing. With HVAC, amperage and voltage is two different things that you're looking for. But with cable, we don't deal with amperage or voltage, so it can be looked at as the same. The only thing that should be going through that line is radio frequency. But if you find out you have an amp connected to it, or a volt connected to it, or something like it, it'll show noise, because power is shooting through it, And also it could be things like a meter, or not a meter, like a the the power structure, the power structure, like the oh my goodness, losing words. Whatever, man. Just, it could just be connected to power some kind of way, or the breaker or something like that. It could be all kind of stuff that could cause an amperage go to it. Like one lady's house I did, her her connector was melted, like it got electrocuted or shocked or something. Or even if lightning strikes, it will still go through that ground wire, but it still can melt some of the lines or melt the connectors and stuff like that. It can melt something and cause a pop or puncture in the line, and so the noise might come through that line, and it could be a ingress. So you find that way, and so it's really good for apartments. But at the same time, even though you might not be able to do something for all apartment types, it's still good to know, so that you can put it in a note. You can put in, you can call your supervisor and let them know, what's going on. Like there's I'm in an apartment. It's a new apartment. The pre-wired line, something happened. The line has an ingress in it, blah, 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 whatever the case. So you're not just checking for the drop. You're checking for the line itself, but 9 out of 10 times it's not going to be the line in a new apartment. It's just connected to amp or some kind of some voltage, some kind of way, or is hooked up into the radio frequency, or is hooked up into the tap, or is connected to another radio frequency like dish or direct TV. You really have to be careful and observe the surroundings as best as you can. Sometimes the customers can say a lot of nothing, and then it can sidetrack your thought process of how you want to do something. And so you end up, doing what they say instead of doing what you plan to do. So you got to be careful. You the technician. So you do that. You tell them how it's going to go or what you can do. You're not here to basically home improvement their house. You're basically here to just make sure that cable is getting to the place that they want it to get to, without going too far. Like if it's like you fishing lines all through, you overly doing it, like if it's something that's not simple, to the point, then you overdoing it. You need to get an electrician, somebody on construction to do it. It just get too much sometimes. But that ingress scan, well, what you don't want to do is scan the ingress. First you want to look at it. You hook it up, look at it to see if it's beaming up, and if it is beaming up, don't hit the scan button. But if you can't tell if there's a wave in it, you end up gambling, and so you end up hitting a scan button anyway. But another thing, like I said about the meter, you need to be sure if the meter is broken or not, or you need to change something in the meter. It could be all of that type stuff. So if you can't see the wave in your meter, you need a whole new meter, because then it could be, your job could be in jeopardy over a ingress scan that could be called a fake ingress scan, and you really could have possibly scanned it wrong, and you couldn't tell, or like me, your meter's broken. You can't see the waves to be able to tell what you're looking at. And so that's how I do it. I hook it up and I'll do an ingress scan. If I found out that a customer got direct TV or something like that, and I'm about to use their lines and stuff like that, I'll do an ingress scan. Depending, if it's difficult or depending on the situation, I'll do a ingress check. So I'll hook it up and whatever the case, and see if it's hooked to a voltage or meter, especially if they said that, oh, my line's in the attic type stuff. I'm straight up hooking that thing up to the ingress thing and see if there's a volt or whatever the case there. But I won't ever hit the download scan button. I'll just, okay, so let me check where your line's running at, the basement or the attic, or in the attic. Okay, so let me check the attic, whatever the case. Some customers might try to play you, especially if it's a man. They'll know that they ran new lines in the basement, but they want you to go in the attic, and they'll say something like, yeah, my lines in the attic. It was old lines they're not using no more. Some people do know what they be doing, and that can fall, that's karma will fall back on them for that, but especially when you have a pure intent. But a lot of times people do want that stuff hooked up, and they're not trying to play with you. So they'll tell you where their stuff is, or where they, the best of their ability, where they think something is, with a genuine heart, a sincere and pure intent. And so then you go there and you find something that it could be like that. But you as the technician, you don't want to doubt the customer, but at the same time, that more than likely is not what they saying, but you just do it anyway to be respectful. But when you are in a comfortable zone or a comfortable setting, you can pretty much do your job better, because you can tell the customer what is and what is not, and this, that, and the third, instead of them trying to still. It can get like that, man. It's all kinds of stuff that goes on. But yeah, so it's just the after statement or whatever, to just say to y'all about the Ingress. You're checking for radio frequency, amps and volts, and just power. Just be like, yeah, you're checking for radio frequency and power to make sure there's no power shooting through the line. And like I said, with cable, it's either direct TV, dish, an antenna or something like that, or and that's it. That's all you're looking for. And if there's nothing, there's a quiet line, then you're good. Or there's just a bad line, and it will be evident. It will be very evident that it's a bad line and it's an ingress in the line. It'll be very evident, and you'll see. What you'll see is like the line is kinked up real bad, but it'll also show a fluctuation. So like I said, the ingress and the flux go hand in hand. So it's not going to be something that's like the meter's telling you, like the meter's lying to you or something. It should not be something that the meter is saying that you can't identify physically, like why you need, oh, okay, I can see, like that you definitely need a new thing on that. It's not going to be anything like that. It will be evident. Like, oh, that's a bad line. Let me change that out. I can see why I said this, or why it's a fluctuation and an ingress. Like that thing is kinked up and it's like all chewed up and scraped and stuff. You can tell. So the job isn't so hard. It's just more so your heart has to be in the right place to do cable, or else it's going to be a burden. And that's how it was for me. Sometimes whenever, like, because sometimes people will say certain things to you and it settle in you, and your expectation of cable can be a little off. Like, the person who taught me cable, my best friend, he was like, you 8 jobs a day. And I'm just like, I put that into my expectation to try to keep that as a standard, like 8 jobs a day. Yeah, 8 jobs a day. But as time passed and I started getting more experience, I started realizing that it's not typical to be doing 8 and 7 jobs a day, yo. Those should be shared. Those jobs should be shared. You should be at least doing like 4 jobs, at the most 5 jobs a day. If possible, you could get 7, 8 jobs done if they're very quick. If things work smoothly. But with Comcast, things don't always work smoothly. And contractors. It's a bad look on contractors to be getting that many jobs done per day, because then they'll start looking at you closely, start thinking you're cutting corners, and then it becomes, because Comcast got to pay you money, and so they're like, oh no, hold on, that's too much money for this person to be. It look like that, so it can be regulated, it could be wrongly regulated. It could be with the intent of, I don't want him to make that much money because I don't make that much money. So it could be people just like, nah, he making too much money, man. He just did, instead of just let you do your thing. It could be all kinds of things that you deal with on the emotional side. But the basic side of the ingress scan is just simply what you're checking for, that wave to not be too high. You can have a small part of that wave peak up or whatever the case, and it could just be because the barrel is loose, or you need to change the barrel or the connect or something like that on the meter itself. So a lot of times it's not that difficult. Like I said, knowing how to read the ingress and the flux together, as well as the upstream and downstream, help you know when a line is good or not, or when typically it could be the tap. So most of the times, actually every time, you want to start at the ground block to check and see if you need to do go to the tap or this, that, and the third. I always start at the ground block, especially in inclement weather. Like now it's cold and stuff like that. When it's cold and stuff like that, you get up in that air and your hands will freeze to death. So you don't want to be quick to run up there in the rain or in the cold. You want to, go to the ground block first. Check, for fluctuations and this, that, and the third. Do an outlet check, do all of that stuff, or whatever the case, and then you move on to the next stage. Go towards in the house, change stuff on right there at the ground block. It's all a sign of like also not disrespecting the previous technician as well. So you're not just trying to be like, let me change this whole thing out because, you know, and this can be a disrespectful thing. If you're talking about a new install where there's no line, yeah, it's all on you now. You got to install all of this stuff fresh. So when you have a new install, you do your best to make everything as fresh and neat and clean and new as possible without any flaws, because a person could live there for 10, 15 years and then move. The next person come in, you know, somebody's going to install that thing and reconnect. And they hoping that this house box is not a mess and somebody did as best as they could. And you see all kinds of things, but you don't never throw anybody under the bus. But you just want to be that technician to do it as neat and good of a job as you possibly can, because it's a good look on a company as well as you, as well as other technicians that come behind you. It lifts. You believe it or not, you'll have a heavy day and you'll come across somebody like me and I did a good job, and you'll see that thing, your whole day will get better. Like, yo, I don't gotta do nothing but just like nothing, yo. This thing is good. It's that everything. I'm so happy, yo. Let me just go ahead and hook this thing up, and it could be just like that. Even customers, like, they could go into a new home and not want to pay for installation. If I didn't hook that thing up right and everything good, they'd be like, man, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna self-install myself. I'm gonna do it myself, and it's all hooked up and stuff. You know, we talking about new homes type stuff or whatever the case. You know, they'll be happy as ever. You know, happy as ever they can plug and play. So it's just all of that, man. So much stuff factors into doing cable, and that Ingress scan turned into this big old talk. But yeah, man. So I think I got like 2 or 3 failed Ingress scans, and that was because I got one tonight because I was trying to find a line, and the house that I was doing was like a townhome and like row homes, and they all were connected together. So all of the lines, they go directly into the house. It's nothing outside to check. No ground block outside or anything like that to check. So a lot of apartments are like that, row homes, all of that, the demarc or the ground block is all inside of the house somewhere. All kinds of funny ways you see it. So I went and asked him. He said, yeah, it's in the basement or whatever the case, the garage base. It's like the garage and the basement area, you know. And so I was checking for the demon. Thing was just hanging out of the middle of like, what? Like, how? So it's coming from, he says, coming from outside directly inside of the house. Is no ground block or nothing outside. I'm like, all right. I said, okay. So it's just like, okay, the way this thing is set up, it's crazy. So you have to work with what you got. A lot of times apartments are the main places where your Ingress scans are going to be funny, because if you work on Sunday mainly, and you might work on a lot of Sundays if you type of person like me, or you might work at a place where there's nobody to give you the data room key. Because when it comes to the data room key, you have to give them your Comcast ID, and they give you a key to the data room, and you go into the data room or whatever the case. Sometimes they're not there, you know, whatever the case. So you have to work with what you got, and you just hoping that the signal is working. So you go into the data room. If the signal isn't working, you have to hook it up. Then you can do your scans and stuff like that from there. But if there's no one available in the apartment, you can't go to the data room to get an Ingress scan on the tap or whatever the case. It was going to always fail. If it's hooked up, it's going to always fail. So what you want to do is just check for a fluctuation. You know, check your upstream and downstream to make sure they are balanced, like that, in sync with one another. You know, you have to know how to read the numbers to tell if it's too high, too low, or they like one is out of spec and one is in. You have to be able to tell. And it would be kind of silly to run an Ingress scan on the line that you're running, because you're doing it yourself. It's a brand new line. So you're just looking for the fluctuation. So that fluctuation and Ingress scan go hand in hand, man. So once you hook it up, boom, it should be all good. Signal score, you know, upstream, downstream should be good, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. If you can't get to that data room, put a mocha filter wherever is the demarc at, or put it right where you can put it at, you know, and have it hooked up that way. You know, just do the best that you can as properly and appropriately as you can with what you're working with. So somebody can come like, well, how come somebody hooked it up right there, put the mocha filter right there? Oh, the data room was locked and closed. So, oh, okay. So, so it helped people understand that you can face all kinds of scenarios and cases, you know. But when you have a technician that's not a lazy technician, meaning they really care about their job, you know, they're not just gonna do any old thing just cause. They're gonna do the best that they can do. It just, they could get tired by the end of the day, or something could be happening in their personal life, and you have to be, you know, consider that. The weather could be all things, man. So yeah, man. So that's just what I had to say on the end of this. So with that said, I'm gonna let it go, y'all.